Classic track from Third Day on Rhema, that is Mountain of God. It is just coming up on 11:15. Joining me on the program from Family Life, Wynand Jacobs, kia ora. Thank you so much for your time today.
Kia ora. Good morning, Andrew.
I've been very much looking forward to this conversation because, I mean, you guys at Family Life, you're experts in marriage relationships and how to have a better marriage relationship. Today, we're talking about how to argue and fight effectively as couples. You're the expert on that topic. You teach me how to win an argument with my wife. Is that what's happening on today's show? Looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, that's the classic conundrum, right? Even if you win the fight with your spouse, you still go to bed with the loser.
Yeah, that is very much the situation. Now, I suppose it is part of communication, and communication, one of the key things to having an effective marriage. It would be easier if we just agreed with each other all the time on everything as couples, but not only is that extremely unlikely, but I'm not sure it's as much fun, Wynand. What do you think?
It's not. You're right. And here's the thing, like, God, I think, has a sense of humor.
Yep.
Because he does, marriage was actually created to refine us and to express, to show his image to the world. But like it's the crazy or the funny, ironically funny thing is that there's some research done by the Gottman Institute. They sort of observe couples and they, do actual science on couples and how they interact.
Okay.
They reckon that 69% of relationship conflicts are on perpetual issues.
Okay.
Meaning they will never go away. They're not the solvable type of conflicts. They're just, you're different, your worldviews are different, your dreams and aspirations might be different. And so, those things, or it might even be personality things, the conflict exists when you're probably not on the same page on a topic. So 69% of those conflicts are over perpetual issues.
Wow.
Now, they did that study with unhappy couples, and they did that study with happy couples. And how do you think that percentage differed with happily married couples?
I would like to think that happy people are more alike, but I suspect that it's going the other way.
It is exactly the same.
Oh, wow.
So the conflict, the evidence of conflict, and even the perpetual type of conflict in your relationship is no indicator of your fulfillment, success as a couple, your oneness, if you will, in marriage. It's all got to do with how you actually deal with conflict, how you move through it.
And I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? That it's not like, okay, we've solved this argument, now my spouse agrees with me. That's not actually how it works. There are some things that we're possibly always going to have a different opinion on, but hey, if we love each other, we can fight fair. We can do things in such a way that honors the other person that we're married to, that we may have a different opinion on some topics, right?
Yeah, and you use the term fight fair. I think that's key.
Yeah.
I know for some, I've just a few months ago, I heard of a couple who divorced who didn't have one single argument in their entire marriage of, I think, 15 or something years. Now, to me, like it's not an accomplishment.
No.
It's to me, that's just evidence that you're choosing not to engage.
Obviously, they're not talking to each other, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So the lack of conflict, isn't necessarily the presence of peace and harmony. Jesus actually refers to it this way. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will inherit the kingdom." I feel like I said that wrong, but bear
it's
with me.
the Wynand translation. We're happy with that.
Well, there we go. And then, but the other option, he did not say, "Blessed are the peacekeepers."
Okay, yes.
There's a difference between avoiding difficult conversations to keep the peace,
yes,
and actually working towards peace through it. So let's talk a bit about fighting fair, if you will.
Yeah.
Practical stuff that we actually teach at our Weekend to Remember. And we don't teach this from a place of having it perfect. We teach it from a place of having to be reminded.
Yeah.
Why do you think I go to so many of these conferences every year?
Yeah, exactly.
Still learning. So, but just as a few practical things, like it's not going to end well any conflict situation if you try to focus on too many issues at the same time.
Okay.
Think of it as washing the dishes. You know, if you have a dish bowl or a sink full of dirty dishes, it's actually really hard to wash any of them.
Yes.
You sort of need to create space, and you take one at a time.
Yeah.
All right. Really practically. So instead of focusing on many issues, focus on one issue.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. Instead of focusing on the person, here's a statement like, I'm going to just say it, but I mean, have you ever heard, or, you know, have you ever heard of somebody else, you know, that friend, a friend of a friend, referring to their partner as, you're such an idiot. Okay. That's not a nice statement, but I'm sure we all on maybe not our best days have had something like that potentially come out of our mouth, or be on the receiving end of that. Well, here's the thing. That's an attack on the person and not on the actual problem. So instead of, when you feel you want to say that to someone who made a uninformed or even illogical or bad decision, you know, focus on that. This wasn't a great decision. This wasn't your best decision ever. It's like, instead of focusing on the person, focus on the actual problem. I'm going to give maybe two more, and then we can go on to the next bit. But again, instead of focusing on the character, like instead of trying to take a presenting issue and make it about your spouse's character, focus on their behavior.
Okay.
It's like, it doesn't make them a bad person if they act a certain way. And if you address the behavior, they'll feel less likely or less of a need to protect themselves. Right?
We can modify our behavior, but hey, if it's our personality or our character, then it's more likely to get defensive, right?
Yeah. And I'll give one more. You know, there's more actually that we cover at our weekend and steps, but I'll just give one more. Maybe it's helpful. Instead of generalizing, like using generalizations, you always you never. Be specific. You know, this happened and this is how it affected me. We need to talk about it, or, you know, this decision. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful, just in a few practical ways.
Really good stuff indeed. And I mean, you were talking about dishes beforehand, and hey, maybe let's use the example of the dishes. You never do the dishes, or you're so lazy, why don't you do those sorts of attacking type things. Now, easy, I suppose, to focus on that when it's something like the dishes or something which has just got under your skin, etc. But what about situations where you just can't get agreement, where you really get stuck? And it's not a trivial issue. This is something which is quite important. And the conflict that you have in this space is pulling you apart. It's pushing you apart as a couple. How do you tackle those situations where there's a bit of an impasse?
Yeah, you know, they call it gridlock as well. So here's the thing, those perpetual issues, those are the things you're probably never going to land on the same page. So you need to constantly engage with them. If you've got humor, if you can engage with your differences and preferences, and as we say this, remember, it's preferences, it's not necessarily needs, it's preferences. Those perpetual issues are often linked to your dreams. What you had dreamed your life would have been, you know, if you were on your own, but now you're with someone and you actually need to make space for the two of you together. And, you know, as your family grows, the family. So sometimes those perpetual issues come from expectations that are preferences. So if you can have humor in those moments, that helps diffuse it. There's an acceptance of one another. There's a dreaming, like an understanding that there's a dream underneath this issue. And if you can listen to that, you can actually decide, hey, how can I, because we want to help each other fulfill our dreams, right? But if we lose sight of humor, if we lose sight of dreams, if we lose sight of fulfilling one another's needs, and that often means sacrificing my own need in those situations, right? There's no negotiation there in terms of getting us both on the same page. There's a negotiation of, hey, I'm going to not do this so that you can have your dream fulfilled. Or sometimes the other way around. You know, that brings you to a space of humility. So when you reach gridlock is when you're in that perpetual space, but neither of you will budge. And it becomes an unsettling, you know, uneasy, peaceful way. It's like it's uncomfortable to be together in that space, and there's even maybe aggression that arises because of this perpetual unmet need. So the way to diffuse that is by actually just listening for their dreams, listening, for the hurt, and helping each other like stay connected and stay calm during the conversation.
Yeah.
So what that looks like is apparently when your heartbeat raises above 100 beats per minute, you cannot hear anything the other person is saying.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So if the emotions rise up, which often happens with these gridlock situations, take a break.
Yeah.
Even 10 minutes can actually slow it down, and then you approach the conversation with the listening posture. And this is where I encourage people, the best thing you can do for your marriage is to go vertical. Because what does Jesus say about this? He says, humble yourself. Right? So it's really hard to want to win an argument when you're also approaching it with a humble situation.
Yeah.
Elray and I sat on the bed one evening after a very difficult conversation, actually a series of difficult conversations. And I just realized that, we work in the space of relationship help and relationship tips. And I said this thing, all the relationship tips in the world cannot actually help us if we're not approaching our relationship with a surrendered posture.
Yeah.
And that revelation hit me, and I stopped fighting. That was me. I was at fault. And I just said, okay, Lord, how do I surrender in this right now? How do I take a humble posture? And you know what? Before we know, the issue didn't go away, but the sting was taken out, and we could actually move forward productively because we've chosen to demonstrate Christ's love in that situation towards one another. And that's my encouragement to your listeners.
Yeah, I really love this because, this is good practical stuff, but it's also recognizing that the spiritual is very practical. And with family life, of course, God's right in the middle of this. And, that makes the difference when, scriptures like, putting others' needs before yourselves, not doing things out of selfish ambition and all those types of things. If we can build those practices into our marriage, then it's not going to solve all the problems. There's still going to be some areas of tension, but it gives us those spiritual tools to be able to work through those issues in love. And Wynand, from my experience, very difficult to argue with somebody that you're praying a blessing on. So, a couple that prays together argues better. It's not quite how the saying goes, but I think it's a good one.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that. Good addition, Andrew.
Now, of course, if people wanted to go a bit more in depth, this is one of the issues that you guys spend. I think it's is it a morning session on the weekend to remember, just looking at conflict and really unpacking this. Look, if this is an area that the people listening to this at the moment, they're saying, this is something that we could do better in with our marriage. There's resources online, but seriously, those weekends to remember make such a huge difference in people's lives, right?
Yeah, totally. And look, people often find a lot of breakthrough after that session because they find they go away, and this thing that they've been carrying for such a long time, now they can move productively forward, through this conflict. So would encourage people to come. It's transformational. Very
good indeed. FamilyLife.nz, of course, for more information about that. Wynand, really appreciate you sharing such practical wisdom, and more of that available online, FamilyLife.nz. Thanks for being on the program today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Andrew.